They say failure is the end. They say it means you weren't smart enough, strong enough, or good enough. But let me tell you something, failure isn't what it looks like. In fact, the very thing most of us spend our whole lives running from might actually be the thing that sets us free. Let me share a story. There was this young guy named Jake. He lived in a busy city, the kind where mornings start with alarm clocks, traffic jams, and coffee cups in people's hands as they rush to work. From the outside, Jake looked like everybody else, just another guy trying to get by. But inside, Jake carried something heavy, something most of us carry but never talk about. He was terrified of failure, and not just a little nervous. This fear froze him. Anytime he wanted to try something new, anytime he thought about raising his hand, sharing an idea, or taking a risk, a voice in his head whispered, "What if you mess up? What if people laugh? What if you're just not enough?" So Jake played it safe. He worked a job that barely paid the bills, kept his head down, and didn't dream too big. He thought avoiding failure was keeping him safe. But deep down, he was living small, convincing himself that hiding was somehow better than trying. But life has a funny way of shaking things up. One night after work, Jake passed a little bookstore squeezed between two tall glass buildings. Its warm light caught his eye, and something about it pulled him inside. The place was quiet, filled with old shelves and the faint smell of paper. In the back sat an older man with silver hair, reading behind a wooden counter. Jake wandered around until a book title in gold letters stopped him. The Hidden Truth About Failure. Curious, he picked it up and brought it to the counter. The old man looked up, studied him, and said something strange. Most people who grab that book end up putting it back. They're too afraid of what it might tell them. "But you look ready to hear the truth." "The truth?" Jake asked. The man nodded. "Failure isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. But most people never stick around long enough to listen." That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He opened the book, expecting some quick advice. But instead he found stories, real stories about people who fell flat, were embarrassed, even broken, but then rose higher than they ever imagined. Page after page, the message was clear. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the road that takes you there. It shook him. All his life, Jake had been running from failure. But now, for the first time, he thought, maybe running away has been the real failure all along. The very next morning, something shifted. On his way to work, Jake spotted a flyer for an open mic event, a night where anyone could step on stage and share a personal story. Normally, he would have ignored it, but this time he stopped. His chest tightened with fear, but another thought followed. What if failure isn't the end? What if it's the beginning? With trembling hands, he tore off the flyer, and just like that, a new chapter began. The competition was 1 week away. Jake had never stood on a stage, never spoken in front of strangers, never shared his personal thoughts out loud. His first instinct was to crumple the flyer and forget it. But the old man's words echoed, "Failure is your teacher." So Jake decided he'd at least try. That night, he sat at his small desk staring at a blank page. Nothing came. Finally, with shaky hands, he wrote the first line, "I am terrified of failure." The floodgates opened. For the next 2 hours, he poured his heart onto the paper, his fears, his regrets, his secret dreams. When he finished, he read it back, bracing for embarrassment. But instead, he felt lighter. He realized maybe this wasn't about impressing anyone. Maybe it was about setting himself free. The week flew by. Every night after work, Jake practiced. He stumbled, forgot lines, and his voice cracked more times than he could count. But each mistake reminded him, failure isn't the opposite of success. Finally, the night came. The place was small, buzzing with chatter. People of all ages were there, each holding their own story. Jake sat in the back, gripping his paper, palms sweaty. One by one, people walked up and shared. Some were confident, others nervous, but every story was raw and real. The crowd clapped for each one, not because they were perfect, but because they were human. Then Jake's name was called. His legs felt like lead. The spotlight was blinding. For a second, his mind went blank. The old voice screamed, "What if you fail? What if they laugh?" But another voice rose, "What if failure is the beginning?" He took a deep breath and started. "I am terrified of failure," he said, his voice shaky. "So terrified that for years I didn't even try. I thought hiding would keep me safe. But now I see, all I was doing was protecting my fear." The room grew silent. As he kept speaking, his voice steadied. He talked about missed chances, about living half a life, about how fear kept him locked up. And slowly he noticed heads nodding. Nobody was laughing. They were listening. They understood. When he finished, silence hung for a moment. Then applause erupted. Not polite claps, but real, heavy applause. The kind that says, "We feel this too." Jake walked off the stage shaking, heart pounding. He hadn't been perfect. He forgot a line, spoke too fast, stumbled over words. But it didn't matter. For the first time in his life, he had failed and survived. And more than that, he had grown. That night, the city lights looked brighter. He realized failure wasn't a monster. It was a teacher, waiting for him all along. The next morning, Jake felt different. His room was the same, his job the same, but something inside had shifted. The fear that once wrapped him like chains felt lighter. Not gone, but loosened. At work, in a team meeting, his boss asked for ideas. Normally, Jake would have stayed quiet. But this time, he raised his hand. His voice shook, but he spoke. To his surprise, the boss leaned in. "That's actually a great point, Jake. Let's explore it." The team nodded. Jake felt a rush. Whether they loved it or hated it didn't matter. What mattered was he spoke up. That became lesson number 2. The courage to show up matters more than the guarantee of success. Weeks went by, and Jake practiced this lesson everywhere. He spoke up more, asked questions, even wrote down his personal thoughts. And yes, he messed up plenty. But each stumble added to his growth. Of course, it wasn't all wins. One night, he stayed up late working on a big idea for his company's website. He was proud of it. But the next day when he pitched it, his boss shot it down. Cold. Not what we're focused on right now. Drop it. The words stung. The old whispers returned. "See? You shouldn't have tried. You're wasting your time." That night, Jake almost slipped back into old habits. But then he remembered the applause from that stage. The old man's words, "Failure is your teacher." So he asked himself, what is this failure here to teach me? The answer came slowly. Sure, his idea was rejected, but in creating it, he learned new skills. He practiced presenting. He dared to think bigger. The failure wasn't proof he was worthless. It was proof he tried, and that was enough. Months passed. Jake kept collecting lessons from every stumble, every rejection. Slowly, failure stopped feeling like a wall. It became a stepping stone. One evening, he went back to that same bookstore. The old man was still there. "I failed again," Jake admitted. The old man smiled. "Good, that means you're learning." "But it hurts," Jake said. "Of course it does," the man replied. "Failure is supposed to hurt. That pain? It's proof you're alive, proof that something inside you is growing." Jake left that night knowing the truth. Failure isn't about the outcome. It's about transformation. And little by little, his life transformed too. The guy who once feared every mistake was now living with courage. Not without fear, fear was still there. But now, he walked with it instead of hiding from it. One night, standing outside that same bookstore, Jake thought about how far he'd come. He realized his failures had given him more than success ever had. They gave him resilience. They gave him courage. Most of all, they gave him freedom. And in that moment, he made himself a promise. Never again would fear of failure stop him from living. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. Failure isn't the end. It's the beginning. So the next time life knocks you down, don't ask, "Why me?" Instead ask, "What's this here to teach me?" And then get back up. Because your story is only just beginning.